Welcome. I am Kelly Hearn with Kelly Hearn's Transitional Leadership, and today we are talking all about democratic leadership. What are some of the benefits and what are some of the risks and pitfalls? Again, welcome. I am Kelly, and you are on the channel where we help individuals and businesses implement leadership and career development skills to foster a greater impact. All right. And today we are doing that through learning about one of the most talked about leadership styles, democratic leadership. So, what is democratic leadership? Well, first, I want to give you kind of a frame of thought because we talk about all different types of leadership and styles and things like that. If you Google it, you will get a million different articles going through all the different styles and types. So, what I want to tell you is democratic leadership is really one of the big, like top three types. And then there's many different styles that fall within those types. So, you can have an autocratic leadership type where that is where you are more of like a dictator, and the leader or manager is just sort of telling everyone below them what to do and how to do it. That is more of the traditional approach that we have talked about in history lessons and things like that. There's a democratic leadership style, which is what we're going to focus on today. And that's where everyone's involved in the decision making process. So, democracy, democratic style, get it? Okay. And then there's the laissez faire. So, that is where it's almost like a free for all. So, we are going to put away autocratic and laissez faire for right now and just focus on the democratic leadership style. So, again, simply put, that just means that all of the members of the team, everybody is invited to participate in the decision making process. And that can be done in all types of different ways, right? So, again, if we think about this in terms of politics, which I do not plan to get political today, we are talking about votes. So, that is how you, as a member of the team, so to speak, are participating in the decisions is by casting your vote. In sort of a corporate level team, sometimes that's voting, sometimes there's voting buttons and emails, things like that. But most often it's part of discussion in meetings. And sometimes it's providing a unified vision that's then backed up by the team members making decisions around how the work will get done. Spoiler alert, that last version is usually some of the most effective when you're in a team environment in a workplace, whether it's a corporate workplace or more of a blue collar type situation, even, you know, restaurants or entertainment, those type of things. That unified vision version of democratic leadership can really be a great option. But that doesn't mean that it's without risks, right? So there's risks and there's pros and cons to every single thing that we can do. And with democratic leadership, what I've seen is there's a lot of risks if you don't have each of the three pieces of it that are required. So, what's required to have really good democratic leadership? You have to have talent within the team. If it's an unskilled group, um, a democratic leadership style is going to be really tough because they're not going to know how to best participate in the decision making. If they don't have the talent and the instincts, they're not going to be really well equipped to help out with those decisions either. So, talent and skill are two critical pieces, and you need to make sure that your team is made up of the right type of people to be able to utilize this type of leadership, this democratic leadership. Next, they need to be supported. So, you need to be a leader who is able to support them. Now, you need to be able to support them both with your own skills and talents and personal abilities, and then also be equipped from the organizational standpoint. So you can have all the abilities in the world, but if you aren't equipped by your employer or by the organization as a whole, then this might not be the best style for you either because you won't be able to support the team. And the fourth piece of this puzzle, very important, is accountability. So, part of what makes democratic leadership work is that you are able to hold the team accountable for the result without really needing to get into that autocratic nitty gritty. This is how you do these things, right? So, done well, democratic leadership gives a voice to all of the people and it creates a lot of buy in. Even if you don't go with what one person wanted to do, it still creates amazing buy in for the fact that you truly listened to them and supported them through the process. You took their talents and their skills seriously. And then, because of whatever the result is, whatever they need to be accountable for in the end, you're able to really articulate why that won't work. So, done well, this can be a phenomenal type of leadership and a great basis for styles that go with the democratic leadership type. But done wrong, it can take forever to get things done. So imagine you have a team of 50 people and everybody has a slightly different view of what should happen. It's going to take a long time if the leader isn't able to unify all of that, if the leader isn't able to do that articulation of why we're going to go in X direction, whether it's a vote. And so we say, well, the majority wanted to go left, so we're going left. Or, yes, I heard all of you, but the direction that we need to go with all of this information is this way. It can really cause a lot of delays. And that's not what we want to see, right? The accountability part is also pretty critical, which I guess goes along with the skills. So if the team doesn't have the skill to be able to get the work done once they've made the decision, or they aren't held accountable to the decision that was made, it'll take a very long time to make the decision, and it'll take even longer to actually see any result from it. And because we know in the work world, there's a million different things coming at you, if you're not disciplined and deliberate about the work that you're doing and what you're being held accountable to, odds are that project will never get done. So I want to give two examples, two examples to help you understand what this can look like, both on the really positive side and on the not so great side. So one example is a team who is working to decrease expenses. So the overall goal was set. They needed to decrease expenses by 10%. Okay. And so all of them within the team were given that goal by the leader. And then they had a lot of discussion around what it would look like to decrease expenses by that amount for this team in particular. Through that discussion, they were able to create a timeline. So maybe, one member of the team would be able to get this done in 2 weeks. They have a couple simple changes that they can make. They have a lot of fat as far as expenses, so they can trim things really easily. Whereas another one was going to have a little bit harder time of it. They were able to get all of that out on the table because of the skill level of the team in one discussion to really understand what it looked like for all of them. And then they were able to set one timeline and one goal overall to have the team be successful. So in this specific example, what that looked like is if the goal is truly for the team to decrease by 10%, that one who has a lot of fat that they're able to trim, they maybe could decrease themselves by 15, which would lighten the load for this other person over here who was running a bit leaner anyways. So they were able to work together to find some processes to do some work and get it all done within 6 months. Everybody pulling, maybe different amounts of weight, but the same in the end to get the team where it needed to go. So the leader then was able to support them in each one of their individual goals. This one working at 15 or working towards 15%, this one working toward about 7%, and then a few other folks in between, and different processes for all of them to meet that same goal. And they worked all towards that same 6-month timeline and were able to use their own individuals' talent and skills to achieve that goal. So that's a really beautiful example of it because they were all able to work together. They were able to determine the work that they could do to contribute toward the goal. They helped make the decision on what that timeline was going to be based on what they could do individually and how they could support each other within the team. So, perfect, beautiful textbook example. Everything's fantastic. But we all know it doesn't always work that way, right? So, I saw another team who was working towards rolling out a process. So, this was similar in the sense that the goal was really just that the work needed to be done, right? The original goal in the last example was that they needed to cut expenses by 10%. This one was that they needed to develop and roll out this specific process. The problem was they got really vague direction around what the process needed to entail. They got even less direction around what the timeline needed to be. It was one of those circumstances where it was rushed, but also nondescript, like we need this yesterday, but you're asking for something that's going to have at least a 3-week communication timeline, not to mention developing the process and rolling it out. So the leader wasn't able to get a lot of really clear direction, and then they weren't able to provide a lot of really clear direction to their team. So the team had the skill level, they had the talent. Their leader was supporting them in finishing the work, but they didn't have enough information on what they were actually supposed to do to be able to get it done. They all started kind of rowing in different directions, vaguely in the same way, but they were struggling to get it done and get it done on the same timeline because they weren't unified in the vision that they were following. And finally, at the end, when the manager over the whole group started asking for the completed result, it wasn't done yet. And there was a lack of understanding around the fact that it was even supposed to be done at that point. So that was really everything going wrong. The talent and the skills were there, but they weren't using them in the best way. The leader wasn't able to support the team in the way they needed to be supported to be able to get any of the work done. And they didn't have any sort of accountability around the timeline or what the end result would look like because there just wasn't enough information shared. So that's kind of the complete other end of the spectrum, swinging that pendulum all the way to the other side because it just didn't work at all. In the end, nothing actually got completed. There were about 5 different process documents, none of them got rolled out. And still, no one knew what was supposed to be happening at the end of that project. So it just sort of like sat in the corner and they started getting distracted by something else that needed to be done, which is what happens quite often when we don't have enough information and we don't have all 4 of those critical pieces of a democratic leadership style. All right. I hope that was helpful. I hope if you resonate with utilizing a democratic type of style with your team, that you're able to pick out the skills, the talent, the way you need to support them, and provide the accountability to that team to be able to get the results that you want to see and that your organization needs from you. If you have any questions or have specific examples that you would like to talk through, please reach out. I would be happy to discuss. I will put the link to schedule some time to talk in the notes of this show. I also will put the link to the blog post that complements this video in the notes as well. So if you learned anything, please like and share with all of your friends who would be able to learn something as well. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks.